Keandre here from AirDailyX.net, back again with another hardware review. Now, I've been using VirtualFly's Yoko the Yoke here for a little over a year and a half, and I honestly have to say, in all of my 20 years of flight simming experience, this is by far the best yoke I have ever put my hands on outside of a Level D flight simulator. Now, VirtualFly had this on display at Flight SimCon 2015, and everyone that put their hands on it simply couldn't get enough of it. In fact, they sold the one that was on display and then sold another 3 or 4 more to deliver after the convention. So people absolutely love it. Additionally, you can go on YouTube, you can pull a number of reviews, and you can see that we pretty much all agree this really is the yoke to have. Now, naturally, it is not cheap, so it's really more for the hardcore enthusiasts that can afford it, but it's also really good for flight training schools as well. Not to mention the fact that this is actually used in real-world flying operations. Now, like I said, I've been using this for a little over a year and a half. In my opinion, I think this is probably the last yoke you would ever need outside of maybe a control loading yoke. But for the most part, I love it. It's really, really awesome. It's solid metal, solid construction. Pulling and pushing on the yoke, you get a lot of force, and the travel is greater than anything else on the consumer market right now. Now, all those wonderful things said, and as great as this thing is, unfortunately, it's been missing something. And I've been feeling this way ever since I put my hands on it. And I have a feeling that VirtualFly has been aware of this as well, because they've set out to do something about it. This is the VirtualFly TQ6 Professional Flight Simulation Throttle Quadrant. And much like its sibling, the Yoko Yoke, it's finely crafted with the highest quality materials for a robust appearance and authentic feel. As for its features, it comes jam-packed with options its nearest competitors can only dream of. Alright, let's just go ahead and address the 900-pound gorilla in the room right now before we go any further. This bad boy is not what many ordinary people would call cheap. So ranking in at around the $600 range, I thought I would go ahead and warn you now before you continue watching this review. This is not your typical SideTech quality or SideTech price point user interface device. So now that we've gotten that off the table, the thing that I love most about this throttle quadrant is how it feels. We don't have to go into the fact that, again, it's solid metal construction, just like its sibling, the Yoko, but it also feels very realistic. It is really, it's sort of a generic prop throttle quadrant, but it has all of the actual knobs that you would feel in an actual aircraft. So you're feeling it the way you would be feeling it in real life. It does have a couple of mounting options. You can either put the mount underneath or behind in this particular configuration. I have it mounted behind it, that way I kind of have it on a step here. Many people might put it up at the top of their desk, but the problem is you wind up having your hands a little bit too high, and I like to reach down for the throttle as you would in an aircraft, so this sits a little bit lower in my particular setup. Now, you can do a custom installation with it, and I imagine many of you might elect to go that route. The thing that you have to be careful of, I'm just going to unplug this or unscrew this here. If you decide to go with a custom mount, you want to make sure that the screws that you use for this are not much bigger. I don't know, is that in focus? That is not much bigger basically than that, because anything longer than that and you'll basically destroy the throttle. On the inside, all of the components are pretty much metal. I will include a part somewhere in this review and try to get the eye point in there as much as possible so you can actually see what it looks like. Another thing that I love about it is you can adjust the tension on these as much as you want. So in my case, I have this set pretty much as stiff as you can get it. But you can loosen it. If you don't like it that way, you can loosen this a bit. You can just kick those around, so you really can, and it's not either it's super loose or but you can actually adjust this if you kind of want something right in the middle. However you want it, you can tighten it however you like. For me personally though, just like the MFG crosswinds, I like to go for the stiffest possible, because as with my rudder pedals, I like to feel as if I'm pushing hydraulics, and as with the throttle quadrant here, I actually like to feel as if I'm pushing the mixture. There we go. That's pretty tight. Same thing with the prop RPMs here. So this can get really stiff. Another thing that I love about it is you do have these detents here. So you've got your cutoff, you have your mixture, and you have your cutoff. And this is one of my favorite parts, because in the simulator, when I go to park my aircraft at the gate, and that's it. You actually get to switch off the engines as opposed to flipping a switch or pushing a button on your mouse or whatever the case is. Here you have your detent for feather. And then you have, for your power lever, you have either reverse thrust, or you can call it beta range, depending on what you're using it for. You can obviously use this on a 737 if you want. When it comes to flying jets, I tend to stick with the Warthog, and I really like to keep this a turboprop flying because it really is very realistic in how it feels. The levers feel very realistic, and if you're a pilot, one of the things you know when you're up there flying, you're not looking down at your throttle. That's probably one of the few things you ever look at, but you know how to feel your aircraft. You know how to feel your throttle. And so in the case with this, it's the same thing. You can feel it. If you want to take it a step further, a friend of mine, he actually, and this was actually my idea, he actually put butt kickers, attached butt kickers to the throttle quadrant, so that way you can feel your aircraft even more. You can feel the vibrations as you're pushing the throttle, or if you're going into beta range, you can actually feel it vibrating, and that's another way that you can further feel your aircraft, sort of training yourself how to feel your aircraft. And speaking of training yourself to feel your aircraft, I mean, this is really, if you're a flight school watching this, or if you're an instructor and you are looking for that next big thing for training your students or your cadets, this is a perfect place to start, because this is going to have your students feeling exactly how the aircraft is going to feel. You're going to have a bit of tension on there, so it's not going to be like a plastic panel where you can just push it up and there it is. You actually got to put a little bit of power, a little elbow grease rather, into the power. And if you are a pilot or you have your own aircraft or whatever the case is, this sort of helps, I want to say, almost blur the line between your actual aircraft and what you have on your desk. And I think that's better too, because when you're at home, and there's not all that many pilots that are fans of flight simulation, at least commercial pilots. I know a lot of you probably own your own aircraft and you fly when you get home. So to be able to kind of have almost a seamless feeling transition between what's in your aircraft and what's on your desk is a very big deal, and that's essentially what VirtualFly has delivered here. So this is it. It's very solid, it's robust, everything in there is pretty much made out of metal. Regarding the price, again, it's not cheap, but there's a few things you have to consider. Number one, quality. You get what you pay for, and that's always been the bottom line. But number two, this isn't made in China. This is 100% European. This is made in Spain. In fact, the first one that they delivered to me was one of the first ones that they had actually developed, and it was handmade. So naturally it had some faults that they have corrected. So I've already spent several months on this throttle with the previous one that I had, which was handmade, and I sent them my feedback, and they continued working on it, and then they came back with the actual production model, which is this one here. And I've been on this one now for about 3 months, and it has just worked flawlessly the entire time. So every fault that they had with that pre-production model, they've corrected here, and it's essentially perfect. I mean, it is an amazing throttle. So rather than my sitting here talking to you about it, let's jump in the simulator, fly a couple of circuits, and let you actually see it in action. Sounds like a plan. I wanted to move into the iPhone mode because this is the only camera that I have that's small enough to get in here. This was the last little bit that I wanted you to be able to see, is to see if you can take a look inside of there and see some of the workmanship here. You can see they're all very solid materials. Not sure how well that's focusing there. But wanted to try to give you an idea of what it looks like on the inside. So you can see there the components are mostly metallic. You can see some of the circuitry there, as well as the components from the inside used to tighten it. So you can see there are a lot of very high quality materials in there. And that is it. Okay, so now that we're here on the desktop, we'll just quickly overview the configuration options. Now, when you first get your TQ6 or any VirtualFly peripheral, you're going to have the VirtualFly test and calibration software. This is version 1.32 that I have here, and basically this will come on a little thumb drive that will ship with your product. Now, with the VirtualFly Yoko, you can see I have this activated straight through their software, and additionally you always want to make sure you go into the default flight. Oop, that's a that's this button here is pulling up Flight Simulator. One of these are. So yeah, you want to make sure you go into the flights, or rather into your control panel, and make sure that you just do the default calibration, just to make sure that your system is picking up everything properly. And then you can go through here and you can calibrate this however you like. Now, the reason why I have the Yoko running through the test and calibration software is because I have a much greater range of sensitivity and dead zone than Flight Simulator allows. So this actually is a lot smoother and gives me a greater range of customization depending on the aircraft I'm flying and my particular needs. So, but when it comes to the TQ6, I actually have the TQ6 running directly through and calibrated through P3D. So in this case, it's not selected. But if I were to select it, you can see here now I have all the controls working here. Now, again, you can calibrate this separately as well. So all you have to do is just take this down to the 0 point and just hit that calibrate 0 point area. That way you know you're right at the detent, and you can calibrate these separately as well. But again, I run these through Flight Simulator, so I can just hit none select it. That way it is only communicating the Yoko information to the simulator and not the TQ6. That way we don't get that conflict there. Now, if we go back into the simulator here, we've got our little C90 GTX here on the ramp. We just go straight into the, let's see, the settings, controls, and we want to select the TQ6. Now you can see here, right now I don't have any axis is selected. So what we want to do is go over to the axis screen, and then we want to program these in all of the engines and or the throttles rather independently. So first we'll start with the mixture axis, and we'll go with the engine 1 mixture. There we go. And then we'll do engine 2 mixture. Next up, we'll do the propeller axis. for engine 1. Propeller axis for engine 2. And then throttle axis for engine 1. And throttle axis for engine 2. And you can see here I've adjusted my throttle a little bit lighter, so I'm not having to push these too hard. And then we just hit OK. Now that we have engine 1, 2, throttle, mixture, everything here is already set. So the next thing we need to do now is we need to now calibrate these. So I like everything to be super sensitive. So I want to make sure we drag all of these to the maximum sensitivity levels. There we go. And let's go ahead and calibrate them now. So now you can see we have them all here on the calibration screen. So we'll just, let me see, let's bring all of these to the 0 point. And then I will reset calibration. And we'll bring them up from the 0. So we'll start with the both throttles here. We'll bring those back. Again here. You can see here all of them, they're not completely calibrated at 0. You can see there some of them are slightly off. So the throttles here. So in cases like this, the next step to go, if you want it to actually line up perfectly, would be to then go in through FSUI PC and calibrate them that way as well, independently. For now, though, we'll just leave it at this. This is just sort of the quick and easy way to get this set through prepared. So we're just going to go ahead and save that. Okay, so now that we're here on our virtual flight deck, let's go ahead and test and make sure that the calibration we made is actually working. So here we have our feather. There we go, 0 point. We have our throttle here. And then we have our beta range. We'll leave that at 0. We'll leave both of these at 0. And then we have our mixture here. And there's a 0 point and cutoff. So let's go ahead and do an engine start. Let's start here. Let's give ourselves some power. Turn on the avionics. Navigation lights are already on. We'll turn on the beacon light here. And let's go ahead and do an engine start. So let's start off by, so we'll start the number 2 engine. Okay, there we go, and now we'll bring it up. There she goes. Actually, this should have been 100%. That wasn't good. There we go, not following checklist here. That should have already been up. Nevertheless, okay. And then we'll go ahead and just give that. And okay, and now we'll start with the number 1 engine, and let's go ahead and generator. We'll turn that off, and then we'll go with the number 2 or the number 1. Wait for that to reach 12. There we go. And now we'll bring it up. And there it goes. And there we are. Now to play with the things a little bit, now I'll go ahead and bring the RPMs down here. There we go. So now we can see here everything is calibrated. If you want a feather. Alright, so now you can see here we have everything more or less calibrated now. And I should feed the generator there and turn that off. So now that that's all sorted out, why don't we go ahead and just run a quick circuit around the airport here. Aside from the feel of the throttles and not having to look down at it and knowing it just by feel, the thing that I appreciate most about having a throttle like this is the fact that now you can really manipulate twin-engine piston aircraft the way they are meant to be used. Additionally, you can use this for turboprop aircraft as well. You just have to set it up properly depending on the type of aircraft that you're flying. And additionally, you can use this for single engine operations. Now, they do have the VirtualFly TQ6, which simply has the one throttle, the one prop RPM, and the one mixture, and it's much smaller. It's about maybe $130 cheaper than this one that you can use for single engine aircraft. Of course, this one's for multi-engine, but if you wanted to use this for single engine, then you would just simply move the one, or you could still use two if you like, but one of these would be dead, in other words. Now, usually I would still, and with this throttle, I actually tend to use the Warthog, which is up here. So I still have lights and landing gear and everything programmed into this. So right now when I take off, I'd be flipping a switch there for the landing gear. This doesn't have any switches on it, which is something that I think a lot of people would probably prefer to have. Let's bring this down a little bit here. There we go. I'm sure that's something a lot of people would like. So in the case with this, there really are no switches here. I also use that for my flaps, so I'm going to have to click and drag this time around. And the reason why I'm not using that is because I have this little webcam here plugged into the slot that this is usually plugged into. That's why it's not lit up. So just keep in mind that if you are, if you do have the VirtualFly Throttle and you want to add the TQ6, just keep in mind that the VirtualFly Throttle, depending on what you use it for, I'm sorry, the Thrustmaster Throttle, depending on what you use it for, you might still find it very useful. So you might want to continue using that for other switches. Just make sure that in some cases you may need to disable the throttle axis on that. Because again, this has no switches on it, so you're still going to need your switches for whatever device that you're using to control a lot of your other aircraft controls with. So right now we're just taking a look at the wonderful Block Island that's from the Orbix scenery. And the trim settings are up here on the yoke, which is outside of your view. We go. If we go a little bit outside of the gear range there, you get that alarm. Let's just bring that up a little bit. There we go. Go ahead and put the gear down. So again, depending on what you're using to control a lot of these other functions, you might still want to continue using that other throttle for all the buttons and switches that it has. And if I want to go into beta, bring that back out. Again, it just feels so incredibly realistic. And as I said, of all of the throttle quadrants that I've ever laid my hands on outside of an actual level D simulator, especially when it comes to turboprops, this really is the best thing money can buy right now. Again, it's not cheap, but definitely for the hardcore home enthusiast, it is a must-have, especially, again, if you run a flight school and you're relying on flight simulators. This is definitely the throttle quadrant you want to be using for those purposes. Alright, and so let's apply our parking brake. And this is my favorite part. And there you have it. Wonderful. So now that you've pretty much seen it in action, you've heard my words, I encourage you to go online, pull any reviews that you can find of this online, and do your research. Definitely do your research. But now that we've seen it in action and you know my opinions and thoughts on it, I absolutely love it. My Yoko yoke no longer feels like it's missing something, and this is what it was missing, was this throttle quadrant. So, where can you get it? And how much is it going to cost exactly? Let's find out. Now, I've already done a rather extensive review of the VirtualFly Yoko, and if you head over to airdailyx.net, you can find that review, and it's rather thorough. It also includes a rather lengthy introduction to who VirtualFly is, how they've gotten their start, and all of the products and services that they provide outside of just doing flight simulation peripherals. But if you want to learn more about them directly, you can head over to their website directly. You can see there at the top, it's virtual-fly.com, and you can get much more of a in-depth idea in terms of everything that they provide. Essentially, they do all the R&D themselves, and then they set out to build these products directly in their offices in Barcelona. So it's a very interesting company, and in 2015, actually, the Solo Station Pro is actually what we had on display. I mentioned that earlier in this review. We had this on display, or rather Jetline Systems had this on display. Jetline Systems had this on display at FlightSimCon 2015, and people just couldn't get enough of it. So you had the Solo flight panel along with the VirtualFly Yoko, and it was probably the biggest hit of FlightSimCon 2015. Hopefully, FlightSimCon 2017, they'll have something else on display as well. Now, if you live in North America and you want to know where you can find these things and where you can buy them, Jetline Systems is the authorized retailer for North America. And once you go to jetlinesystems.com, just click on VirtualFly there at the top, and you can see all of the VirtualFly items that are sold. So here you can see the Yoko is here, the Solo flight panel, the Solo airliner panel, and this is really what I'm hoping will come to FlightSimCon 2017 is now you have a full IFR panel here, which is just a huge touchscreen that can be set up in a number of different configurations. So that's a really good one as well. Again, with the Solo flight panel too, it's almost the same type of setup where behind these gauges, it's an LED or LCD screen, I should say. I don't know if it's LCD or LED. but it's a screen that's actually behind these gauges. And so each one of these gauges can be set up to represent a different type of gauge for a different type of aircraft because it's a screen that's behind it. So that's also really cool. With that, we have the rudder pedals, which I have not put my feet on yet. You can see there's the Yoko, and then of course we have the TQ6 and the TQ3. So right now the TQ6 is retailing for $615. Like I said earlier on, it is definitely not cheap. And the TQ3 is also retailing for $490, and this is the authorized retailer for North America. So you have seen it in action, and like I said, you know, this throttle, it may not be for everyone. I think it is for everyone in terms of the quality, but it may not be for everyone in terms of the price. But that's not to just say that only rich people can afford it. I mean, again, if you run a flight school, or if you're a flight instructor and you are looking for peripherals to train your students with, in my opinion, this is the first place and probably the last place you should look in terms of these devices, because this is going to be the most realistic you're going to find. Now, this says pre-order now, deliveries by late August, but this was put up last year, and I don't think Jetline Systems has updated that yet. So you should be able to order this and get them in the mail within a few weeks' time. They do ship straight from Spain, straight from the VirtualFly headquarters. Jetline may have some in stock directly, and then maybe they may ship them directly. I don't know what their stock is like, but if you're in North America, this is where you would get them from. Anywhere else in the world, you would just head right back over to VirtualFly directly, and you can order fly direct through VirtualFly. So this is where you can pick these babies up. They are amazing, and you definitely do not want to miss out on these if you have the opportunity to get them, because they really are awesome. For more information on VirtualFly and its product lineup, visit virtual-fly.com. For more information on Jetline Systems, visit jetlinesystems.com. For AirDailyX.net, I am DeAndre Newman, and happy flying!